Lessons from Seneca's Calm in Chaos. Hey guys, tonight, we enter a different kind of stillness. Not the stillness of sleep or silence after a long day, but the stillness that comes when a mind has weathered storms and no longer flinches. Tonight, we walk alongside Seneca, philosopher, statesman, and survivor whose calm was not gifted by circumstance, but forged in the heat of political fire. Outside, the streets of Rome begin to cool. The stones of the Forum retain the warmth of the day, but shadows stretch longer now. You step into a modest villa on the Palatine Hill, not overly ornate but well kept. The scent of parchment and olive oil lingers in the air. A single candle flickers near a low desk, illuminating scrolls, carefully unrolled words of comfort written in an age of chaos. This was Seneca's world, Rome under Nero, a city gilded on the outside but cracking within. He served at the heart of an unstable empire surrounded by betrayal, suspicion, and bloodshed. And yet here he sat, pen in hand, words, deliberate, spirit, quiet. You might not endure this, you realize. Few would. Imagine walking daily into an emperor's court, knowing that one wrong glance, one overheard word could mean your death. And yet Seneca kept writing, kept advising, kept steady. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you'd like, post your location and what time it is where you are. It's always calming to see where in the world we're falling asleep together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand behind him now in imagination. Seneca's shoulders are relaxed. His breath is measured. He is not hurried, not overwhelmed, because long ago he decided something radical, that nothing external truly belongs to us. Not wealth, not status, not even reputation. What does belong? Our choices, our reactions, our character. He writes slowly, scratching onto wax tablet. Perhaps the line is from a letter: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. A dog barks faintly in the distance. The room remains still. You settle into the calm. You're beginning to feel it already. Not a sleepiness, but a loosening. A soft unwinding of whatever tightness you've carried into the night. You sit with Seneca now, not as a student, not even as an observer, but as a quiet presence sharing the room. He doesn't acknowledge you. This is not a vision of magic, but of memory and reflection. Still, you follow the rhythm of his breath, the way he brings awareness not to the noise of the world, but to the hush beneath it. He rises slowly, not because of age or ailment, but because he believes there is no virtue in haste. His movements are as deliberate as his philosophy, every gesture a form of self-governance. He wraps a simple woolen cloak around his shoulders, the same type worn by Stoics before him, and steps toward the courtyard. There's no audience, no grandeur, just a solitary man and a sliver of moonlight. The soft shuffle of sandals across stone. He gazes up at the night sky, not for omens, but for anchoring. The stars, he often wrote, remind us of proportion, how small we are, how free we are if we learn to want little. The breeze tugs gently at a fig tree's leaves. You watch his face, stern but peaceful. It is not that we have a short time to live, he once said, but that we waste much of it. And in this moment, it becomes clear that he wastes none. Every breath is measured, every thought inspected. Scholars still wonder whether Seneca's commitment to Stoicism was genuine or convenient. Was he simply surviving Nero's court-cloaking compromise in philosophy? Or was he a true Stoic, flawed but sincere in his effort to live according to nature? You realize that perhaps both can be true. That living well isn't about never bending, but about bending consciously, knowing when silence is wise and when action is worth the cost. Seneca leans on the column beside him, staring into the dark garden beyond. He doesn't need distraction. There is no scroll in his hands now. No servant with wine. Just him and the night. And you begin to understand this is the ritual. Not a ceremony with incense and chants, but an unwinding of the day, a return to self. You follow his gaze, letting your own breath fall into rhythm again. You're no longer tracking time. Only stillness. Only presence. And in the quiet, you remember something he wrote long ago. He who is brave is free. The stars seem brighter now, not because they've changed, but because you've slowed enough to notice them. Seneca stands silently, as if counting each one not by number, but by meaning. His posture is straight, even in solitude. No audience, no need to perform. Dignity for him isn't for show, it's a habit of thought. You hear the distant sound of a water basin being filled in the atrium. Not hurried, not loud. The kind of gentle domestic noise that once filled Roman villas long before the empire's decline. The house breathes with quiet routine. Seneca's world, though full of pressures and palace intrigue, begins and ends with simplicity. He once said, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life." You reflect on that, on the idea that today was not just another square on a calendar, but a whole lifetime. And as you exhale, you feel something shift. The day's mistakes don't follow you here. They've already passed. You are already someone new. Seneca turns slowly, walking back toward the inner chamber. A small clay oil lamp flickers on a wooden shelf, its flame steady despite the breeze. The light kisses the corner of an open scroll. On it, faint handwriting in sepia ink, a draft perhaps of one of his letters to Lucilius. The words speak of anger, how quickly it burns, how slowly it heals. He wrote that anger is like a fire that starts in a dry forest, easy to ignite, impossible to contain. No man is made worse by patience, he once penned, and it still feels like a balm for centuries. You sit with that idea, letting it ripple. When you reacted harshly today, was it nature or habit? Could you have waited? Could you have let the storm pass before speaking? Scholars debate whether Seneca always followed his own advice, especially when navigating the cutthroat politics of Nero's Rome. But you sense that he tried, that his words were not polished for fame, but wrestled into being. He gently folds the edge of the scroll and places a smooth stone atop it. A Roman habit, perhaps, or just a quiet punctuation. The lamp casts his shadow on the far wall, elongated and wavering, but not weak. You lean back mentally, not physically, drifting into that same rhythm. You don't need to resolve every inner debate. Not tonight. The practice isn't to conquer the self, but to sit with it. To light the lamp and observe without judgment. The breeze shifts again, this time warm, carrying the smell of crushed laurel and worn parchment. Seneca lifts the lamp in one hand, steadying it as he walks past you toward the hall, not rushing, not fearing the dark corners, and neither do you. You follow the soft glow of Seneca's lamp as it disappears down a narrow hallway, each footstep echoing faintly against cool stone. The corridor bends slightly, revealing a courtyard open to the night sky. A single olive tree stands in the center, its silver-green leaves gently rustling in the breeze, catching the lamplight like threads of soft metal. Seneca pauses by the tree, letting the air settle around him. He doesn't rush to fill the silence. To him, silence is not empty, it is instructive. He once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." You recall this as your own mind begins to wander, worries from the day, expectations for tomorrow, old mistakes you've already replayed too many times. You remind yourself those are not real tonight. They are only shadows on a wall. Seneca lowers himself onto a stone bench near the olive tree. The weight of his robe folds around his legs. His movements are intentional, never lazy. Not a single gesture wasted. Even in solitude, he maintains poise. The kind of grace that comes from years of inward discipline, not from seeking approval. You sense a tension in your own shoulders begin to release, not because of what he says, but because of how he is. There's a stillness to him, like a lake undisturbed. It's not detachment, but equanimity. He knows storms come and go, but the sky always clears. On the low table beside him rests a small wax tablet. He picks it up, turning it over in his hand, as if weighing not the object, but the ideas it once held. Perhaps it's from an earlier letter, one not yet sent. He once told Lucilius that a letter even unsent is worth writing, if only to refine one's own thoughts. A Stoic doesn't always speak to be heard, they speak to be understood by themselves. He leans forward slightly, elbows on his knees, deep in thought. You wonder what crisis he might be reflecting on, perhaps one of Nero's erratic decisions, or the betrayal of a colleague. Scholars still question how much influence Seneca truly had in the imperial court, and whether his eventual exile was earned or inevitable. But Seneca never pretended his control extended beyond his own mind. That he believed is all that ever truly belongs to us. You look again at the tree, its bark rough, its trunk twisted from years of growth and resistance, and yet it bears fruit. Not in spite of the struggle, but because of it. You trace the shape of a nearby leaf with your eye, and your breath aligns again with the quiet pulse of this place. Seneca shifts his gaze, lifting upward toward the stars. If you live in harmony with nature, he once said, you will never be poor. If you live according to what others think, you will never be rich. You sit with that not as a moral judgment, but as a gentle reminder. He stands, stretching slowly, the folds of his robe catching the breeze like sails, and you, just by watching, have begun your own quiet ritual of reflection. You trail behind Seneca as he steps back into the house, the mosaic floor cool beneath your feet. The air changes slightly more, still more scented by burning olive oil from a lamp perched near the far wall. Shadows sway gently across the frescoed plaster, soft and slow like waves across a painted sea. Seneca's movements remain unhurried. He approaches a wooden table and unrolls a small scroll beside a shallow dish of ink. He dips a reed pen, the bristles delicate, and writes something without hesitation. You can't see the words, but you imagine they're not meant for the world. They're for him. An evening note, a check-in, a kind of personal audit. Earlier in his writings, he described a daily habit. Every night before sleep, he would examine his actions, his thoughts, his choices. What bad habit have you cured today? He would ask himself. What fault have you resisted? In what way are you better? It wasn't punishment, it was pruning, a gardener's task, removing the withered parts of the self to let the stronger branches flourish. You watch him pause, his pen held just above the scroll. His eyes soften. He is not judging himself in anger, but in clarity. It's an honesty without cruelty. You consider how rare that is, to look at yourself without flinching, but also without self-deception. To know you've done what you could, and to forgive yourself when you haven't. Outside, a low breeze hums through the shutters. The room feels timeless, no calendar, no hourglass. Just a philosopher and the silence of his own mind. There's something sacred about it. Not in a religious sense, but in the stillness it demands. He finishes writing and lets the ink dry while he warms his hands near the lamp. You notice the texture of his skin, aged, weathered, and yet steady. His discipline wasn't born of calm times. No. He knew violence, banishment, and the threat of execution. Yet he could say a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. You let that settle as your own thoughts float gently by. What would your reflection look like if you sat with it as patiently as Seneca? What if you treated your missteps not with dread, but with curiosity? What if your quiet regrets were not signs of failure, but invitations to realignment? Seneca folds the scroll and places it aside. His day is not over, but the noise of it has ended. There is no fanfare, no victory parade. Just this, a quiet man, and the simple discipline of knowing himself. You exhale slowly. You don't need to fix everything tonight. But you can begin. The candle near Seneca's bedside burns lower now, its soft flame casting amber halos across the walls. You remain seated a short distance away, your back straight yet relaxed, as if some of his presence, his practiced ease with discomfort, has reached you without words. Seneca leans forward, adjusting the folds of his cloak. You notice how he performs even the smallest motions, with deliberation, as though nothing in life should be rushed, not even the folding of cloth. There's an art to restraint, and here it lives in gestures. He turns his gaze to the far end of the room, where a bronze statuette stands, a small figure of Hercules, weathered, muscular, unmoving. Seneca once wrote of Hercules not as a hero who escaped pain, but one who embraced the burdens placed upon him. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, he wrote. For he is not permitted to prove himself. You reflect on that. In your own life, the weight you carry may feel personal, even unjust. But what if it is also necessary? What if it too was placed in your hands, not to punish, but to prepare? Seneca once lived in exile, stripped of status, far from the Senate halls of Rome. Yet in those quiet years, away from power and politics, his most enduring wisdom emerged. He wrote of mortality, of anger, of letting go, topics you'd think a man might avoid when he has lost everything. But that was the point. Sometimes, he said, even to live is an act of courage. You close your eyes briefly. That sentence alone carries enough weight to still your racing thoughts. Even to live is courage. Especially when the world feels unsteady. Scholars still debate whether Seneca practiced all that he preached, particularly in the final years of his life under Nero. Was he a master of his passions or a man trapped in compromise? The truth, like most things, lies somewhere between. But this moment right now reveals the ideal he pursued. Not perfection, but the continual act of self-alignment. Seneca finally rises slowly and begins to tidy his space, not out of vanity, but as ritual. The reed pen returns to its place. The ink is corked, the cloak draped over a carved wooden chair. Nothing extravagant, just rhythm and order like the breath. You feel it too, that each small motion can be a kind of meditation. That even now, as the outside world spins in chaos, you have the power to place something in order, if only within your room, your thoughts, your breath. Outside, a dog barks once, then silence. The stars settle deeper into the Roman sky. And in here, where a philosopher prepares to rest, you are reminded that peace doesn't arrive. It is chosen. The candle's light is barely more than a pulse now, a flickering glow that stretches long shadows across the floor. You shift, slightly mindful, not to break the stillness of the room, as Seneca moves to sit beside a basin of cool water. He doesn't rush. He never does. The night outside has deepened. Through the narrow slit of the window, only a sliver of moonlight trickles in. You imagine the bustling Roman streets now emptied, the chaos of the Senate chamber silenced by nightfall. This perhaps is why Seneca cherished these hours, when all the performances of the day dissolve and only truth remains. He dips his fingers into the basin. The water is cold, but his face doesn't flinch as he touches it to his temples. A simple act, yet it echoes something deeper. To rinse the mind, to cleanse the soul of needless attachments. He once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The words arrive in your mind like an echo, not scolding but sobering. You wonder how many hours today were spent in worry, comparison, distraction. How many were truly yours? Seneca's letters often return to this theme of time, how it slips through careless fingers, how precious it is when claimed with intention. In these late hours, he didn't write grand speeches or lofty decrees. He reflected on the self, on virtue, on death. He believed that reviewing the day was not a luxury, but a discipline. What bad habit have I cured today, he would ask himself. What fault resisted correction? You glance around the room again. There are no lavish decorations, no feasts or wine, only the quiet companionship of wisdom and wood and flame. It's in this simplicity that you begin to understand what Seneca meant by wealth, not coins or villas, but freedom from chaos. Scholars often ask whether Seneca's counsel, written from within imperial luxury, could truly speak to hardship. Could a man who once advised Nero really understand detachment? But again, you're reminded it isn't purity that Stoicism demands, but progress. Not escape, but endurance. The philosopher dries his hands slowly on a rough cloth. Then he leans back, not to sleep yet, but to sit with his thoughts. You do the same. Your breath slows again, sinking gently with the rhythm of candlelight and shadow. Tonight you are not analyzing, not fixing, not proving. You are simply being like Seneca in this moment. Fully awake in the quiet, fully aware of what belongs to you and what does not. There is strength in that awareness. Not the kind that wins arguments or earns applause, but the kind that allows you to meet the world with steadiness, with calm, with the quiet assurance that whatever chaos rages outside these walls, your inner citadel remains untouched. You stay seated, watching the last traces of candlelight dance across the stone. In the corner, the oil lamp hums faintly, its flame slow and unwavering like Seneca's presence. There's a stillness now that doesn't feel empty. It feels earned. Seneca, still upright, breathes slowly. He doesn't reach for scrolls nor for the stylus. Not yet. This moment, this breath is not for output. It's for noticing. You begin to realize something he knew well: the world will always demand more of you, but your task is to demand less of it. His thoughts linger not on unfinished business or imagined insults, but on the choices he did have. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, he once wrote, as if whispering across time to every mind that's ever rehearsed disaster in the dark. And how often have you done that, spun whole storms from passing clouds? Outside wind stirs gently against the door. It brings with it the faint scent of damp stone and rosemary from a neighbor's garden. The city hasn't stopped far from it, but Seneca's mind has. Or rather, it has returned inward where his true work begins. You begin to picture him in younger days before the court, before the letters, standing alone in a garden, hands clasped behind his back, eyes raised not to the sky but inward. He always believed philosophy was not for display, but for daily use. Philosophy, he said, teaches us to act, not to speak. And here he is now, teaching without saying a word, showing you how to close the door on chaos without locking the world out, how to reflect without judging, how to own what is truly yours, your responses, your values, your peace. Historians often debate whether Seneca practiced all that he preached. Was his wealth a contradiction? Did he bend too easily to Nero's cruelty? These questions matter, but perhaps not tonight. Tonight, it's his inner clarity that reaches you, the calm within contradiction, the steady flame amidst politics and pressure. You shift slightly, mirroring his stillness. Your own shoulders lower. The mind softens. You recall a phrase from one of his later letters. He who is brave is free. Brave not in the sense of conquest or speeches, but in the quiet defiance of worry. The courage to greet uncertainty with grace. The night deepens further, but you don't resist it. Like Seneca, you meet it with presence, not protest. You understand now that this practice, this nightly turning inward, is not weakness or retreat. It's strength, reclaimed. You feel it now that you've stepped out of the current of rushing time and into a deeper rhythm. One shaped not by the demands of the world, but by the deliberate breath of reflection. Your eyes follow the patterns of shadow stretching across the ceiling, elongated shapes cast by a flickering oil lamp and the gentle movements of the night. Somewhere in the distance, a clay jar shifts, releasing a soft clink like a closing thought from the day. You feel yourself slipping deeper into Seneca's world, where quiet is not absence, but presence magnified. He finally reaches for the stylus. Not quickly, not compulsively. There's no urgency in the gesture, just intention. He sits beside the low wooden table and unfolds a fresh wax tablet. His hand hovers above it for a moment, and you sense he isn't writing to impress or to instruct. He's writing to see himself more clearly. This too is a ritual. He begins with something simple, a single sentence perhaps. Maybe what troubled me today. You imagine the line forming as if etched into water. There's no judgment in the question, just curiosity and the courage to look closely. This is the essence of Stoic evening reflection. Not a list of faults, but a calm inquiry. What did I do well? Where did I fall short? What stirred me? What did I let go? Seneca often recommended this practice as a daily obligation. He wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I have done and said." This wasn't indulgent introspection. It was daily maintenance for the soul. You begin to try it yourself quietly, internally. Did you let frustration lead? Did you speak more than you listened? Was there a moment when you chose calm over chaos? These aren't punishments. They're reminders that the self is something shaped like marble with patient daily strokes. Scholars still debate whether this practice came more from Roman custom or Hellenistic philosophy. Was it Seneca's own invention or adapted from Pythagorean teachings on daily moral inventory? But as the candle wavers and the wax cools, such questions feel secondary. What matters now is how real it feels, how necessary. Seneca leans forward, etching another line. Perhaps something softer now. What can I let go of? This is not weakness. It is wisdom. To let go of control, of insult, of imagined futures, that is Stoic strength. A refusal to be owned by what you cannot command. You notice his posture upright, but not rigid. There's humility in it. A man of immense influence, but here just another soul trying to stay honest with himself. That's what this moment teaches, that wisdom begins in the quiet. You glance at your own day in your mind. No need to dramatize it. Just look. Then soften. Then let go. Not everything must be carried into tomorrow. A breeze moves across the room, across the flame bends, then straightens. So do you. The wax tablet remains on the table, glistening faintly in the lamplight. Seneca doesn't rush to fill it. Some nights only a few words are enough. Others, the thoughts spill out like rain gathering in a basin, slow, steady, inevitable. Tonight he pauses again. Not for lack of thoughts, but because reflection to him isn't performance. It's practice. You watch him turn slightly, his eyes tracing a small crack along the wall, something unnoticed in daylight, but revealed now in the stillness. Perhaps this too is a metaphor. The small fractures within ourselves we only notice when we become still enough to see them. Evening is the only time quiet enough to reveal such lines. He exhales, the kind of breath that says, "Here I am," no disguise. Then, almost like an afterthought, he murmurs aloud as though speaking to himself or perhaps the universe, "If you wish to be loved, love," a line he's written before, and one he returns to now with fresh weight. This phrase wasn't born out of sentimentality, but experience. Seneca lived amid corruption, political fear, and betrayal. Yet his philosophy insisted on kindness, not because the world was kind, but because he believed a disciplined mind could choose its way. To love even in chaos was a discipline. He writes it again slowly, "If you wish to be loved, love." You feel the words reach into your own chest. How often we wait for proof of love before we offer it. How often we delay courage until comfort arrives. But Stoicism flips that, calling us to embody first what we seek. Scholars still argue how sincere Seneca's kindness was, especially given his role under Nero. Was it hypocrisy or a sign of his inner battle? Did his wealth compromise his words? These are the questions that echo in the margins of history. But tonight, you're not concerned with his contradictions. You're watching a man trying to live by his better nature despite himself. He dips the stylus again, scribbles something you can't quite read, then folds the tablet closed. The writing is done, but the reflection continues. You shift your own thoughts. Who have you withheld kindness from? What reaction did you bottle up today that still simmers? Could you, like Seneca, choose to be more than your impulse? He stands. Slowly, like someone rising not just from a chair, but from a state of thought. His candle is nearly burned low. The shadows are deeper now, thicker but not ominous. They hold the warmth of the day behind them, a promise that sleep is near. He doesn't look anxious for dreams, nor does he resist them. This moment, this room, this breath, these belong to him. And you realize perhaps that's the only thing that truly does. This space within yourself that no one else can own. The night deepens, but it does not darken you. Instead, it cradles you just as Seneca's thoughts cradle the day that has passed, not gripping, just holding. The candle finally gutters out, leaving only the soft, pearled glow of moonlight spilling across the room. Seneca does not move to relight it. He sits again, this time without writing, without planning, just breathing. You mimic him. No pen, no task, only breath. The Stoics would say this moment, this stillness, this being is enough. Not because it's spectacular, but because it is yours. No one can take it from you. Not emperors, not time, not fortune. Seneca turns his gaze toward the window where the shape of a fig tree casts a wavering silhouette. He once wrote, "No man has the power to have everything he wants, but it is in his power not to want what he doesn't have." You roll that over in your mind as the wind rustles the leaves gently outside. It's an idea that's simple on paper, yet monumental in practice. Contentment isn't something you stumble into. It's cultivated, sharpened, forged like a blade over time with repetition and under heat. You imagine Seneca facing the chaos of Nero's court, with that phrase like armor. But even armor grows heavy. Historians still wonder if Seneca truly achieved the inner peace he so often wrote about. His letters overflow with wisdom, but also flashes of fear and self-doubt. Was he writing to others or to steady himself? Does it matter? You glance again at the room. There's nothing extravagant here. the faint outline of a wooden chest, perhaps holding a blanket or two, a chipped clay cup, a shelf with no more than 3 scrolls. You sense that Seneca's daily routine was a series of gentle choices to own, less to need, less to be more. He shifts in his seat back straight, not because of pride, but practice. You try matching his posture. Something in you lifts, steadies. It's a posture of openness, of humility, of receiving the moment as it is. There's a strange comfort in recognizing how little control you have. Seneca found this truth not in weakness, but in strength. By surrendering the illusion of control, he gained command of himself. You wonder now, what did you try to force today? What inner knot did you tighten instead of loosening? What if, like Seneca, you could let go? He stands again, slowly, rhythmically. A body trained by years of intention. His fingers graze the worn edge of the windowsill. The night air cools his skin. Still no sign of rushing. The Stoic evening isn't a ritual of tasks. It's a surrender to presence. You follow. Not with your feet, but with your attention. Seneca doesn't offer you steps. He offers something deeper, a way of being that isn't loud or dramatic, but clear. And when you listen closely beneath the silence, there's the quiet hum of self-discipline. Not rigid, not cold, just steady. Like breath, like moonlight, like calm. You linger in that quiet room, the weight of Seneca's presence soft around you. He is not speaking, yet he teaches more with silence than most do with sermons. That perhaps is the essence of his strength. Not just what he said, but how he lived it. You notice a small wax tablet near the windowsill, etched faintly with a phrase you can barely make out. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. You imagine his stylus pressing into the soft wax by candlelight, writing those words, not for show, but for survival. Seneca lived in a time when each day could bring the wrath of an unstable emperor. He was surrounded by whispers, betrayal, political games. Yet night after night he returned to this writing, not to please Nero, but to ground himself in truth. He called this nightly practice adversity training, preparing the mind for what life may bring. You reflect on your own days. How many end with scrolling, rushing, numbing? How many begin without pause? There's no judgment here, only a gentle invitation. The Stoics didn't demand perfection. They asked for presence. They knew that life would not slow down on its own. You had to choose stillness. The room fades even more into shadow as Seneca extinguishes the final oil lamp. Darkness settles gently like a familiar friend. For a moment, you're unsure whether he's asleep or simply reflecting. But then he shifts, folds his robe, and lies down, not as someone defeated by the day, but as someone who has closed the final page of a well-read scroll. The simplicity of it all is striking. No final entertainment, no clinging to news or gossip. Just breath, posture, awareness. A good character, he once said when established, is not easily overthrown. Scholars still debate how much of Seneca's wisdom was filtered through political necessity. Was he sincere in his letters, or were they crafted performances? Perhaps both. Perhaps even he wrestled with the gap between the ideal and the real. But if so, that only makes his effort more valuable. He kept showing up to the page, to the silence, to the effort. You close your eyes now, still breathing in rhythm with the pace he set. The night outside deepens. The moon climbs slightly higher. Somewhere in the distance, a nightjar calls out once and then goes quiet. And you understand, peace isn't the absence of trouble, but the result of making room within yourself. You are not required to finish every task. You are not obliged to conquer every fear before sleep. You are only asked to meet the moment honestly, like Seneca did again and again. No fanfare, no audience, just a quiet room, a few words, and the courage to face the day as it was. And slowly, softly, you begin to let go of what didn't belong to you. The rhythm of the night deepens as your breath slows. You rest on the mat, aware of the gentle weight of your own body, the stillness of the room, the echo of Seneca's quiet defiance against chaos. It wasn't armor he wore, not the kind forged from metal or gold. His was the armor of practiced calm, rehearsed night after night in still corners forged in reflection. What need is there to weep over parts of life, he once asked. The whole of it calls for tears. And yet he didn't weep, he wrote. He wrestled gently with truth and left it behind like breadcrumbs in a forest of uncertainty. You shift slightly, matching that calm, as if drawing it into your own ribs. The moonlight filters in more fully, now spilling pale silver across the tiled floor. You imagine it's the same moon that looked down on Seneca as he composed his final letters. The same silence, the same distance from the noise of Rome's feast halls and crowded courts. There's something sacred about this solitude. It's not emptiness, it's full of the echoes of your own thoughts, your own questions. What truly belongs to you, what can you carry even when the world changes shape? Seneca's answer was simple: your reason, your will, your integrity. All else, the body, reputation, fortune, is lent to you by time and can be recalled at any moment. You hold only what you freely give to your own character. That's both a humbling and liberating thought. And here's a deeper layer. Seneca was no stranger to contradiction. He advised emperors while writing about simplicity. He held wealth while teaching about detachment. Scholars still wonder whether this was hypocrisy or insight. Maybe both. Or maybe, as some suggest, the tension itself made him wiser. A man aware of his flaws is better equipped to guard against them. You let that thought drift through you like incense smoke, no need to pin it down. This isn't a lesson to memorize. It's a way of seeing. You picture Seneca now, younger, scribbling by lamplight in a corner of his estate, watching his thoughts sharpen as the world outside frays at the edges. What could he control? Very little. But how he met each thought, how he shaped each word that was his kingdom. So too for you. This moment is yours. This calm, this breath. You carry no badge, no title, no ancient toga, but like him, you can meet the darkness, not with fear, but with readiness. You close your eyes again, letting go of the day, not by forgetting it, but by accepting it. Each flaw, each stumble, each silent victory, all part of a life examined not perfectly, but with courage. The night wraps more tightly now, soft as a woolen cloak pulled up to the chin. Outside the window, not even the wind stirs. It's the hour Seneca knew well, not just for sleep, but for turning over the day one last time, like a craftsman running fingertips over finished marble. You imagine Seneca seated on a low stool, shoulders relaxed, his face half lit by the warm glow of an oil lamp. He isn't writing now. He's just thinking, replaying conversations, noticing where he was quick to anger or slow to kindness. He doesn't scold himself, he observes. He learns. This is his Stoic prayer, not to beg the gods, but to better himself. His advice echoes gently: as long as you live, keep learning how to live. You trace that thought like a finger across cool stone. There is no arrival. There is only refinement, night by night. You take that cue and reflect. Where did your mind wander today? What stirred envy? What calmed you? Did you act from fear or from principle? Not all the answers come easily, but the asking alone brings you closer to yourself. That's the part no one can take. Seneca didn't demand perfection. He knew how unruly the soul could be, but he insisted on progress. Even 1 inch closer to temperance, to clarity, was enough. And this nightly stillness was his forge. He believed every person must be both the marble and the sculptor, daily carving away excess, daily revealing what is most essential. Scholars still debate whether these reflections were philosophical exercises or private therapy. Perhaps they were both. In a world where emperors fell and fortunes crumbled, this inner inventory gave him a foothold. He measured his wealth not in coin, but in self-command. A servant might enter to extinguish the lamp. A distant dog might bark in the dark. But none of this disturbs Seneca. His peace is portable. His mind is not shackled to the noise. You sense that too now. Lying still, tracing your breath like ink on parchment, you feel the separation between what happens and how you meet it. A tiny, sacred space. That's where your freedom lives. The lamp flickers for the last time. Darkness settles in, but it doesn't feel empty, it feels complete. You lie back, your body softened by the quiet weight of reflection. Somewhere far beyond this moment, the world stirs. But in here, the stillness is your own. Seneca often spoke of chaos not as something to fear, but as something to understand. You must live for another if you wish to live for yourself, he once wrote. And what he meant was this: in times of disorder, the most powerful act is to remain composed, not only for your sake, but as a lighthouse for others. You imagine him in one of those moments, perhaps, when Nero's violence darkened Rome, or when conspiracies shifted like shadows in the Senate halls. Others panicked. Seneca did not. He returned again and again to the rituals that rooted him. Walking among the garden paths, copying lines of philosophy, writing long, measured letters not to flatter but to guide, to offer a still point in a world constantly tipping. Scholars still wonder how much of his calm was real and how much was posture, self-discipline, turned to performance. But whether learned or innate, the effect was real. When others burned out, Seneca endured. You listen now to your own breath, soft and steady. That's how it begins. Before the big decisions, before fate tests your resolve, you build your stillness here in the small, quiet hours. The world may shout, but you will have your calm. And maybe, like Seneca, you will share it one day, not with grand speeches or heroic deeds, but with the way you hold yourself when life stumbles. With the patience in your voice, with the steadiness in your hands. You are not immune to the chaos, but you are not hostage to it either. And as the candle within your mind fades, you carry one final truth. Strength is not loud. It is not sharp. It is not fierce. It is quiet, and it is yours.